As we continue these first Sundays in the new year, we are continuing to explore the values that we are rooted in, values we share with the former Meewasin Valley United Church. This was their list that they held up before themselves each time they gathered, and now in relationship with SSUC Saskatoon and SSUC Edmonton, we continue exploring, and today we're exploring creativity. We want to take a moment to breathe into moving from getting here to being here, to settle ourselves and to sing ourselves into the oneness of this community, the oneness with all that is.
We welcome each other to the circle that is SSUC, that is Southminster Steinhauer United Church, that is this circle gathered here in this place, and those gathered wherever you happen to be joining us online. We welcome you to this place. As we've been exploring these values that we see on the wall and how we're rooted in each of these words, we might get the sense that we should excel and be perfect in each one of them. It isn't so, is it? We come to this place ordinary, flawed people who are doing their best. We come here full of energy, but we all also come here on a weekend morning and perhaps sleepy. We come here full of goodness and joy, but also heartbreak and challenge. We come here full of those things that make each of us unique, but also full of what connects us to each other in our common humanity. We can be full of agitation and worry and stress and anxiety and be welcome here. We can be shining the light of our highest humanity, but still be looking for ways to find it. We can be full of peace and calm and feel ready to tackle this day, or a hot mess, not knowing what's next. So in all those ways that we gather, know that we are welcome here, that we are made special, made sacred in our being community with one another, in walking together in whatever ways we need to. And that's why we call ourselves spiritual community. Loved, accepted, welcome, just as we are. It's in that spirit that we gather with gratitude for the place that we're in and the people that we are. We acknowledge that this land on which SSUC sits is for thousands of years traditional land and territory of the Cree, Blackfoot, Nakota Sioux, Dene Ta. Today, this is the place and home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we acknowledge that it is not always easy to live in the spirit of reconciliation. We take steps forward, and we take steps backward. But this is a place where we honor what has come before and seek to live in relationship towards partnership and reconciliation, as difficult as it may be. Today we light this candle as we always do. And we recognize that as we explore our rootedness in creativity, that we come to that word with challenge at times. Perhaps you're like my mother, who said to me many times when I was a child, "I don't have a creative bone in my body." And she said that because her definition of creativity was whether she could draw the human form or a horse on a piece of paper. But our creativity goes much broader and deeper than that. It encompasses all of the way we live and the way we breathe, the way we express ourselves. And so in this day when we focus on our rootedness in the creative acts of living, may we focus on this light that connects us in that same spirit. Let's sing our way into this circle again as we greet this new day. I want to welcome anyone who would like to come for the Time for All Ages to come forward. A time for a story, a time for a chat up here. There's lots of room on the carpet. Come find a spot. I brushed my teeth this morning, so you can come right up here. Good morning. We are going to talk about creativity today, and I want to read a story about that. It's a really good one. It's called The Dot, and it's by Peter H. Reynolds. If you ever need a good book to read, Peter H. Reynolds, all his books, all of them, they're all good. Art class was over, but Vashti sat glued to her chair. Her paper was empty. Vashti's teacher leaned over the blank paper. "Ah, a polar bear in a snowstorm," she said. It's all white, right? All white. "Very funny," said Vashti. "I just can't draw." Her teacher smiled. "Just make a mark and see where it takes you." Vashti grabbed a marker and gave the paper a good strong jab. There! Her teacher picked up the paper and studied it very carefully. She pushed the paper toward Vashti and quietly said, "Now sign it. Put your name on it." Vashti thought for a moment, well, maybe I can't draw, but I can sign my name. The next week when Vashti walked into art class, she was surprised to see what was hanging above her teacher's desk. It was the little dot she'd drawn, her dot, all framed in swirly gold. Oh. Humph. I can make a better dot than that, thought Vashti. She opened her never-before-used set of watercolors and set to work. Vashti painted and painted a red dot, a purple dot, a yellow dot, a blue dot. The blue mixed with the yellow, she discovered she could make a green dot. Vashti kept experimenting, lots of little dots in many colors. If I can make little dots, I can make big dots too. She splashed her colors with a bigger brush on bigger paper to make bigger dots. Vashti even made a dot by not painting a dot. Look, she put dots all around, made one big one. At the school art show a few weeks later, Vashti's many dots made quite a splash. She noticed the little boy gazing up at her. "You're a really great artist. I wish I could draw," he said. "I bet you can," said Vashti. "Me? No, not me. I can't draw a straight line even with a ruler." Vashti smiled. She handed the boy a blank sheet of paper. "Show me." The boy's pencil shook as he drew his line. Vashti stared at the boy's squiggle, and then she said, "Please sign it." That's the end of that story. Even if we think we can't do something like that, we all have creativity within us. We all have the ability to do something that no one else can do. It doesn't have to be art on a page. It could be music. It could be the way we move our bodies. It could be having ideas, or cooking, or the way we dress, or the way we kick a soccer ball, or anything. Do you kick soccer balls? Yes. And I bet you do it like no one else. So, we can do things creatively, even if we don't think so. The way we make friends, the way we show kindness, we can all be creative. And we don't have to be perfect at it. Creativity doesn't mean perfect. It means we try and we express what's inside us and we let it out in only the way that we can let it out. So, today, in whatever you're doing, I know here today in preschool or in Kids Spirit or whatever you do today, there are times to be creative. So I hope that you take Vashti and remember and just start and see where it takes you. Even if it's a dot, you'll be fantastic. Shall we go? Let's go. Let's go. You're invited to preschool or... Some are going that way, some are going...
Every culture, every tradition has its stories of who we are and how we got here, kind of those primal myths of creation. This is one that comes from the Sioux people, a creation story. The Creator gathered all of creation and said, I want to hide something from the humans until they're ready for it. It was the realization they create their own reality. The eagle said, give it to me, I'll take it to the moon. The Creator said, no, they'll go to the moon and find it. The salmon said, give it to me, I'll bury it at the bottom of the ocean. The Creator said, no, they'll go there too. The buffalo said, well, why not give it to me? I'll bury it on the Great Plains. The Creator said, they'll cut into the skin of the earth and they'll even find it there. Grandmother Mole, who lives in the breast of Mother Earth, who has no physical eyes but sees with inner eyes, said, so put it inside them. And the Creator said, it is done. In this creation myth, the book of Genesis, which opens the collection of some 66 books that the Christian and Hebrew scriptures have taken to be a foundation in our experience. That book opens with two mythical accounts of creation. The one we see first in our Bibles is a long poem which imagines the calling of life forth from night into day, from beginnings of light into the emergence of the human species. A second account follows in the second chapter, and rather than poetry, it's a narrative, it's a story, and we hear part of that story just now. In the day the Creator made the earth and the heavens, when no plant of the field was yet in the earth, and no herb of the field had yet sprung up, for it hadn't yet rained upon the earth, and there was no one to till the ground. A stream would rise from the earth and water the whole face of the ground. The earth creature was formed from the dust of that ground, and breath was breathed into this creature's nostrils, the breath of life, and the earth creature became a living being. In this creation myth, we all know the power of creativity in our lives. We've been moved by music that opens something in us we didn't even know was there. Or we've seen a sculpture or a painting or a photograph that takes our breath away. We've watched films and plays that replay in our mind again and again, taking us deeper. We've read poems and novels that spin a world each of us see in great detail, but completely differently in our imaginations. We've seen movement, dance that's made us believe in grace and beauty. And even though we live in a world of creativity, we find it hard to believe that a world of creativity lives in us. It's taken me decades to consider myself to be a creative being. I was the kid that locked myself in the bathroom during craft period in Vacation Bible School and went AWOL during craft in summer camp. And I'd still be in grade 5 if my father couldn't have drawn a country store. Or I'd still be in grade 8 home economics if my mother hadn't been able to sew the project that I avoided all through class and would bring home each week for her to work on. As an adult, it gets much better. It's so much easier to avoid arts and crafts and drama. You just have to not go to those parties where they play Pictionary or charades. It's taken me a long time to think of myself as being creative, or to feel at home rather than scared to death of creativity. Because wood and stone and canvas and fabric are not my medium. But words and ideas and stories intrigue me. It's whatever engages our imagination. For many of us, it's a really long journey into ourselves to discover what was hidden inside us from the beginning. It takes a lifetime for some of us to know that creativity is our natural state. Creativity, as Matthew Fox would say, is the most elemental and the most deeply spiritual aspect of our being. It's where our humanity meets its essence. He says creativity isn't a noun or even a verb. It's a place, a space, a gathering, a union, a where. It's where the powers of the universe's creativity and the powers of human imagination join forces. I think that's one of the life lessons we find hidden in the creation myths that our own tradition gives us. In the older of the two narratives, our primal story of life begins with this earthling, a being breathed into existence from dust by a creative energy, and that being becomes an inspired being. We've been breathed into. The younger story is the poem that precedes that story, and it's about a creative energy speaking planetary life into being, calling light out of darkness, inviting the emergence of day and night and earth and sky and land and water and sun and moon and stars and creatures of land and water, animals and humankind being that would have the creative powers just like its creator in the story. And it's these two creation myths together that introduce that great archetypal story of Adam and Eve and the talking snake. And in tasting that feared fruit, they discovered what lay hidden within themselves. Much like that Sioux creation myth, they discover the power we have to create our own reality. In the primal garden story, we see the earthling discover what it means to become human. We see these two characters evolve into the fullness of what it means to be the human species. We watch them choosing to become conscious, choosing to relinquish their dependence and become responsible for the world, for the generations that will follow them. We see them choosing to be like the gods, choosing to call forth life, to be part of the creative energies of the universe. We see them choosing to be a creative being, just as the gods have been so far in that story. And we know from our species, our history, that our creative capacity has the power to be a force for good, and it has the power to be a force for great danger. Because we have the capacity to create, and we also have the capacity to destroy. We have the capacity to use our creativity to serve the greater good, or we have the capacity to use our creativity for a distorted purpose, an evil intent. We have the creative capacity to enhance life or to endanger it. That was the great lesson Andrei Sakharov painfully learned. As a shy, brilliant physics student at Moscow University, Sakharov longed to uncover the secrets of the universe. And his creative genius led him to become one of the first creators of the Soviet thermonuclear bomb, a weapon that could be 1,000 times more powerful than an atomic bomb. In his early years, he believed that his work was essential to the safety of his country. At the beginning of the Cold War, Sakharov thought that there could only be peace if the Soviets were as strong as their enemies. He believed the bomb he was helping create would deter attacks against his country. And it wasn't until they were about to test the first weapon that anyone thought to calculate the radioactive fallout. Somehow Sakharov and his colleagues in their tunnel vision managed to give little regard to the danger being created for tens of thousands of people who lived downwind of the site of the explosion. And it wasn't until shock waves from their testing, an even more powerful bomb, killed a soldier inside a collapsed trench and a little girl in an old bomb shelter. It wasn't until then that Sakharov began to question the ends that he was serving with his creativity. He began to pull his head out of the sand and to see that he had helped to create the most powerful weapon in human history and had no control over who would use it, when it would be used, and how it would be used. So he immersed himself in a new act of creativity, a new set of calculations to determine the probable number of deaths that would result from radioactive fallout caused by testing the bombs. And in 1958, 3 years after that first fatal test, he published his results in a Soviet scientific journal. Those attempts that he made to persuade his government that there were ways to avoid testing the weapons by actually dropping them succeeded only in convincing his government that his conscience required surveillance. And as he learned more and more about his government's misdeeds, he gave his best creative energies to writing about the dangers of the nuclear age. He wrote about the way in which nuclear weapons had changed the world. He argued for freedom of thought and freedom of speech, the need for open and healthy debate as a way of solving our problems, not weapons. To find solutions together would take cooperation, not an arms race. And thanks to someone's creative and subversive role in smuggling his essays out of the Soviet Union, his words were printed in the New York Times, and more than 18 million copies of his essays were printed worldwide in 1968. From his experience of exile, he fought not only for a ban on nuclear weapons and nuclear testing, but also for human rights, championing the cause of so many activists and prisoners of conscience in his country who had been silenced, who had been imprisoned, who had been exiled or executed. And even though he wouldn't be allowed out of his own country to accept the award, in 1975 he won the Nobel Peace Prize for his stand against nuclear tests and his campaign for peace and his fight against the abuse of power. He continued to be public enemy number one in his country until Mikhail Gorbachev was persuaded to release him from exile in Siberia. Returning to a collapsed Soviet Union and a new Russia, Sakharov celebrated what he said would be a future that could be wonderful, but it might not be, because it depends on us. And it always has. It has always depended on us since the first human drew the first breath. In our creativity lies the world's greatest hope. And in our creativity lies the world's gravest dangers. And there's no way out of our multiple dilemmas that we found ourselves in except the route that got us here in the first place, our powerful creativity. It's our evolutionary inheritance. But to apply our creativity in the service of justice and compassion requires us to govern our creativity with another gift of our humanity, our moral compass. Our divinely inspired capacity to know good from evil. Our divinely inspired capacity to use our creativity in the service of our highest values: truth, love, respect, peace, justice, compassion, integrity. The list is longer than the list we can paint on our walls. My friend and mentor Carolyn McDade has said so many times, creativity is our natural state. It's not just true of some of us, it's true of all of us. The myths from each culture that tell us who we are, how we got here, why we're here, they all affirm that just like the cosmos, just like the universe itself, we are creative beings. It's our true nature. To recover our rootedness in creativity also requires that we subject our creativity to the scrutiny of our moral compass, our ethical awareness, our deep consciousness. To give space for our creativity to flourish is to be guided by our highest values in spiritual practices, which are perhaps the real purpose for religion and spirituality. This is our time to take this space of silence we hold with one another, to consider how it is that that cosmic creativity, that generative power we see in the universe, seeks to be released in each of us, and how it is that we might place our creativity in the service of goodness and in the service of grace. take a moment to speak our gratitude for the gift of creativity and for our intentions as to how we place it in the service of what is good. And so I invite us to share these words of prayer together in our many voices and in one spirit. We are grateful for the gifts of creativity, breathing dreams into our little bit of stardust. We open to the possibilities that our lives hold, stirring us to create the ways of love, peace, and justice. As we seek to engage our creative potential, we pray that it may be so. Amen. I want to express gratitude for all that you make possible by the ways you give your time, you give your talent, you give your energy, you give your creativity to this community. You make so much possible by the giving of all that you have. We have been able to support over the last just over 2 years, 3 different refugee sponsorships: the Omar family, the Alamad family, and our friend Fuad, a single individual from Syria. All of these folk of Syrian origin. And today we want to celebrate that the Alamad family have been with us just a little over a year. So I want to invite them and all of the team that have been supporting them as they seek to make their life here in Canada to come and share a few moments of celebration with us for the year that we've had with one another.
It was nearly to the minute, 13 months ago, that a very excited group of us from Southminster and friends from Edmonton greeted and welcomed the Alamad family to their new life in Canada. An adventure supporting this very, very special family from Syria had just begun. And oh my goodness, where has that year gone? We thank you for the opportunity to honor and to celebrate the marvelous adjustment, and I know that's a value statement, that this family has made, and to honor the contribution we know they're going to make to our Canadian way of life. As you probably have heard us speak and share, Mohammed and Aisha, with their 4 young children, had fled violence in Syria and spent 5 years in a refugee camp in Jordan before being allowed and made the decision to come to Edmonton. They told us at about day 3 they had never seen snow. And what is this, minus 20 degrees? They spoke only Arabic. Mohammed and Aisha and your family, where are you? There you are, have jumped right into life in Edmonton, embracing that very, very first cold, cold, dark winter and equally smoky, smoky summer with little hesitation.
We're going to sing in just a moment about that universal energy that is part of all of us, that growing consciousness we take. But we go as light, each of us distinct and bright and shining in our own creative energy. We go to live with grace and courage and determination and hospitality. We go into this journey we share together.